He was 6'4", 240 pounds, ranked 7th in the heavyweight division of professional boxing. 3 knockout wins in the previous 6 months. And the moment he walked into Main Street Gym in downtown Los Angeles on a Tuesday afternoon in October of 1967, he saw something he had not expected to see. A small Chinese man, 5 feet 7 inches tall, 135 pounds, in a plain gray sweatsuit, working a heavy bag in the back corner of the gym. The heavyweight stopped walking. He looked across the gym at the small man hitting the bag. He turned to his corner man. He said 5 words loud enough for the entire gym to hear. He said, "Is that the Kato guy?" 40 professional fighters stopped what they were doing. For seconds later, the heavyweight was sitting on the canvas with blood running from his nose, his cornerman frozen in place, and the small Chinese man back at the heavy bag working as if nothing had happened. The 40 witnesses in that gym thought they had just seen the end of the story. They had not. What happened in the next 18 months between those two men became the most carefully guarded secret of Bruce Lee's career. And what almost happened in the weeks before it, a Hollywood power play designed to bury Bruce Lee permanently, would not be revealed until correspondence between Bruce and his business partner James Yim Lee surfaced in 2010. This is the full story. The mocking, the 4 seconds, the midnight return, the secret training, and the conspiracy that was supposed to end Bruce Lee before the Big Boss ever existed. Stay with me on this one, because to understand the moment when a 6'4" heavyweight contender hit the canvas, you have to understand why Bruce Lee was in that gym in the first place. Why he was working a heavy bag at 3 in the afternoon when most of the world believed he was still a television star. And why the man who walked in that afternoon to mock him had been told, by a man Bruce did not even know existed yet, that this was the time to do it. In October of 1967, Bruce Lee was $36,000 in debt. The Green Hornet had been canceled 5 months earlier. His name still appeared in entertainment magazines, but the work had dried up almost completely. He had filmed a few small appearances. He had taken some private students at premium rates. He had pitched 2 of his own television projects to 3 different studios and been rejected by all of them. Linda was pregnant with their second child. Brandon, their son, was almost 3 years old. The Lee family was renting a small house in Bel Air that they could not afford. Their landlord had given them a final notice in September. They were 1 month away from being evicted. Bruce was training 6 hours a day. Not because he had a fight coming up, because training was free, and sitting at home with the rejection letters made him feel like he was disappearing. He was spending his afternoons at Main Street Gym because James Lee had told him that the only way to truly understand Western boxing was to put himself in a room full of professional boxers and let them treat him like one of them. The trainers at Main Street had accepted Bruce. The boxers themselves were a different story. Most of them respected Ali. They studied his footwork. They argued about his combinations. But the idea that a small Chinese television actor could teach them anything about fighting was something they were not prepared to entertain. Bruce had been training there for 3 months by October. He was tolerated. He was watched. He was never invited to spar. Until the afternoon the heavyweight walked in. The heavyweight was not from Los Angeles. He had flown in from the East Coast for a fight scheduled 3 weeks later at the Olympic Auditorium. His regular gym had closed for renovation. His promoter had arranged for him to use Main Street as his preparation site. The local boxing community had been buzzing about his arrival for 2 weeks. He was the kind of fighter who attracted attention everywhere he went. Loud, confident, famous for his pre-fight interviews, famous for hating cameras and loving microphones. He walked into Main Street with his cornerman, his trainer, and 2 friends from his hometown. He stopped just inside the door. He looked around. He saw the small Chinese man in the corner. He said his 5 words. The gym went silent. Bruce did not stop working the bag. He hit a 4-punch combination. He stepped back. He bounced once. He hit another combination. The sound of his gloves on the leather was the only sound in the gym for almost 10 seconds. The heavyweight smiled. He walked across the gym floor with the deliberate slow pace of a man who has decided to make every step count. His friends and his cornerman followed at a respectful distance. He stopped 6 feet from the heavy bag. He stood there watching Bruce work. After almost a full minute, he spoke again. This time louder. He said, "Hey Kato, they let TV actors hit the bags now." Bruce did not respond. He hit the bag again. The trainer who had been working with Bruce, a former welterweight named Tony, took 2 steps toward the heavyweight and then stopped. Tony had been around the boxing world long enough to know what was about to happen. He also knew, in the way trainers always know, that there was nothing he could say that would stop it. The heavyweight took another step closer. He started talking, not yelling, just loud enough to be the only voice in the gym. He said small men should stick to small fights. He said Bruce should go back to Chinatown and teach other small men how to look impressive on television. He said the only reason Bruce was in a real gym was because real fights had not been invented yet for people his size. He said 3 more things that the witnesses later refused to repeat in interviews. They said the language was specifically chosen to push Bruce past the point where any man could stay calm. Bruce kept hitting the bag. The heavyweight stopped 6 feet behind him. He waited. The gym waited. After almost 30 seconds, when it became clear Bruce was not going to turn around, the heavyweight made his offer. He said, "Step in the ring with me. 3 rounds. I will not even use my right hand. I will just slap you around with my left. Let's give these guys a real show." This was the trap. The exact same kind of trap that had been set for Bruce in Long Beach 3 years earlier, but built around a different weapon. If Bruce accepted, he was about to step into a ring with a ranked heavyweight contender who outweighed him by more than 100 pounds. If Bruce refused, the story of the Kato actor who chickened out in front of 40 professional fighters would be in every boxing gym in America by Friday. Bruce stopped hitting the bag. He turned around slowly. He looked at the heavyweight calmly. He did not look angry. He did not look afraid. He looked like a man who had just been handed a math problem with 1 correct answer. He said 2 words. He said, "Right now." The heavyweight laughed. He had his answer. He turned to his cornerman and said something about giving him 3 minutes to wrap up. He started walking toward the equipment area. Bruce said, "No wraps." The heavyweight stopped. He turned back. He frowned. He asked Bruce to repeat what he had said. Bruce said, "No wraps. No gloves. Right now. On the floor. No ring." The gym went silent in a way that was different from the silence before. The first silence had been anticipation. This silence was something closer to dread. 40 professional fighters all understood what Bruce had just done. He had just removed every advantage that boxing rules give to a boxer. No gloves meant the heavyweight's hands would be vulnerable to bone strikes. No ring meant no ropes to corner Bruce against. No 3-minute rounds meant the fight ended when it ended. Bruce had just turned a sparring exhibition into a street fight, and he had done it in less than 2 seconds. The heavyweight should have walked away. Even his cornerman, a man who had been in boxing for 30 years, knew it. The cornerman stepped forward and put a hand on the heavyweight's shoulder. He said quietly that this was a setup. He said the kid was trying to bait him into something stupid. He said they had a fight in 3 weeks and they should not risk an injury. The heavyweight shook his hand off. He looked at the 40 fighters watching. He looked at Bruce. He understood, in the way men like him always understand, that walking away from this would be worse than anything that could happen if he stayed. He took off his jacket. He took off his shirt. He walked to the open floor in the center of the gym. Bruce had not moved. He stood near the heavy bag, hands at his sides, breathing the same way he had been breathing for the last hour. The 40 witnesses formed a rough circle. The cornerman positioned himself near the front, ready to intervene if anything went seriously wrong. Tony, the trainer who had been working with Bruce, moved to the opposite side of the circle. The heavyweight settled into a boxing stance. Left foot forward. Hands up, chin tucked. He had taken this stance 10,000 times. He had won every amateur fight from this stance. He had taken 3 professional opponents to the canvas in the previous 6 months without ever shifting his weight from his back foot. Bruce did not take a stance. He just stood there, feet shoulder width apart, hands relaxed, the same neutral posture he had used 3 years earlier in Long Beach. The same posture that had become his signature for situations exactly like this. The heavyweight frowned. He yelled at Bruce to put his hands up. Bruce said nothing. The heavyweight decided to stop waiting. He stepped forward and threw a jab. Here is what happened in the next 4 seconds. Second 1. The jab traveled forward at the speed and angle the heavyweight had practiced 10,000 times. The fist accelerated toward Bruce's face along a line his trainers had calibrated for him since he was 14 years old. Bruce did not block the jab. He did not slip the jab. He did not counter the jab. He stepped diagonally forward and to the heavyweight's outside, which put him beside the heavyweight's lead shoulder, facing the same direction the heavyweight was facing. The jab missed his head by 18 inches because his head was no longer where the jab had been aimed. It had moved to a position the heavyweight had never seen another fighter move to. Second 2. From this new position, Bruce had access to the right side of the heavyweight's body. The heavyweight could not throw a right hand at Bruce because Bruce was beside his lead shoulder, not in front of him. The right hand would have to travel across his own body to reach Bruce, which meant rotating his torso, which meant losing his stance entirely. The heavyweight's brain was now solving a problem his body had never been trained to solve. For a fraction of a second, the signal from his brain to his body simply hesitated. Second 3. Bruce's left hand moved. Not in a punch. In a sharp upward strike with the heel of his palm. The strike traveled approximately 14 inches and connected with the heavyweight's nose at an upward angle. The strike was not designed to break the nose. It was designed to flood the heavyweight's eyes with reflexive tears. The nervous system responds to a strike on the nasal bone by triggering involuntary tear production. The heavyweight's eyes filled with water in the space of a single heartbeat. He could not see clearly. Blood started running from his nose almost immediately afterward, but the tears came first. Second 4. While the heavyweight's eyes were blurred, Bruce's right hand moved in a short horizontal arc. Not a punch. A short clipping strike with the side of his fist to the heavyweight's jaw, just below the right ear. The strike did not knock the heavyweight out. It overloaded the nerve cluster in the same way the Long Beach strike had 3 years earlier. The heavyweight's left knee buckled. He tried to plant his feet. His feet did not obey. His weight shifted forward. His head dropped. His hands, which were still raised in a boxing guard, were no longer protecting anything because his body was no longer in a fighting position. He fell. He did not crash. He did not collapse dramatically. He simply lowered himself to the canvas in the way a man lowers himself when his structure has been removed all at once. He ended up on his knees with his hands flat on the floor in front of him. Blood ran from his nose onto the canvas. He stayed that way for almost 10 seconds. The 40 witnesses did not make a sound. Bruce stood 3 feet away. He was not breathing hard. He was not gloating. He was not smiling. He was just standing there with his hands at his sides looking down at the heavyweight calmly. If you are still with me on this story, do me one quick favor. Hit that subscribe button. Because what happens in the next 30 seconds is the moment that almost everyone in that gym thought was the end of the story. They were wrong. The real story does not start until 6 hours later, in the middle of the night, when somebody knocks on the locked door of an empty boxing gym in downtown Los Angeles. Trust me, you do not want to miss this. Now back to the gym. The cornerman walked onto the canvas. He knelt beside the heavyweight. He put a hand on his shoulder. He asked him quietly if he could stand up. The heavyweight nodded. The cornerman helped him to his feet. The heavyweight did not look at Bruce. He did not say anything. He walked to the bench where he had left his jacket and shirt. He picked them up. He walked out of the gym. His cornerman followed. His trainer followed. His two friends from his hometown did not move for almost a minute, and then they walked out as well, looking back at Bruce as they left. Bruce went back to the heavy bag. He worked for another 40 minutes. The 40 professional fighters in the gym did not say anything. Most of them did not return to their training. They watched him work. When Bruce finally stopped, he wiped his hands with a towel, said a quiet goodbye to Tony, and walked out of Main Street Gym just before 5 in the evening. He drove home. He had dinner with Linda. He played with Brandon for an hour. He went to bed at his normal time. 40 professional fighters thought they had just witnessed the end of a story. They had not even seen the beginning. At approximately 11:30 that night, a knock came at the back door of Main Street Gym. The night janitor, a man named Hector who had worked there for 12 years, opened the door cautiously. Standing on the back steps was the heavyweight contender. Alone. No cornerman. No trainer. No friends. He was wearing a different jacket than he had been wearing that afternoon. His nose was bandaged. His eyes were swollen. He asked Hector quietly if there was a phone he could use. Hector let him in. The heavyweight made one phone call. He spoke for less than 2 minutes. Hector did not listen to the conversation. When the heavyweight hung up, he sat down on a folding chair near the equipment closet and waited. Bruce arrived 20 minutes later. This is the part of the story that has only been confirmed publicly since the publication of the Bruce Lee correspondence in 2010. The letters Bruce wrote to James Yim Lee between October of 1967 and February of 1969 were donated to a martial arts research archive after James Lee's family rediscovered them in a box of estate papers. The letters described, in Bruce's own handwriting, the night the heavyweight came back to Main Street Gym. According to the letters, the heavyweight had called Bruce's home that evening. Linda had answered. The heavyweight had identified himself by his full name and apologized to Linda before asking if he could speak to her husband. Linda had handed the phone to Bruce. The heavyweight had told Bruce on the phone that he needed to talk to him. Not on the phone. In person. He had asked if Bruce would meet him at the gym. Bruce had agreed. He had told Linda he would be back in an hour. He drove down to downtown Los Angeles. When he arrived, the heavyweight stood up from the folding chair. He walked to the center of the gym floor, the same floor where the 4 seconds had happened that afternoon. He waited for Bruce to walk over. He spoke quietly so Hector could not hear. According to Bruce's letter to James Lee written 3 days later, the heavyweight said the following. He said he had been paid by a Hollywood producer to provoke Bruce into a public fight at the gym. The producer had told him that Bruce was about to be offered a film role that the producer wanted to give to someone else. The producer needed Bruce to look unprofessional in front of the boxing world so that the studio would have a reason to pass on him. The producer had offered the heavyweight $5,000 in cash and a small role in a separate project. The heavyweight had taken the money. He had walked into Main Street that afternoon with a specific script. He told Bruce that he had not expected what happened in those 4 seconds. He said he had expected Bruce to refuse to fight or to fight badly. He had not expected to end up on the floor in front of 40 professional fighters with blood on his face. He told Bruce that he was returning the $5,000 to the producer the next morning. He told Bruce that he had spent the last 6 hours thinking about everything he thought he knew about fighting, and that none of it had survived the 4 seconds that afternoon. Then he asked Bruce a question. He asked if Bruce would teach him. Bruce sat down on a folding chair. He did not answer for almost a minute. The letters do not record what he was thinking in that minute. They only record what he eventually said. According to the letter to James Lee, Bruce said, "I will teach you, but you will teach me too, and nobody can know." The heavyweight agreed. For the next 18 months, the two men met 3 nights a week at Main Street Gym at 3 in the morning, after the gym had been locked for the night. Hector had been given a small payment in cash to leave the back door unlocked. He never told another person about the arrangement until he was interviewed for an oral history project in 1996. The interview was sealed at his request until after his death. He died in 2004. The interview was released to the same archive that received the Bruce Lee letters. The exchange between Bruce and the heavyweight was specific. Bruce taught the heavyweight footwork patterns adapted from his own developing system. He taught him how to read an opponent's commit punch. He taught him the science of offline positioning that had been the entire basis of the 4 seconds. The heavyweight, in exchange, taught Bruce Western boxing in a way no other instructor had been able to teach him. He taught him head movement specific to dealing with elite combination punchers. He taught him the small adjustments in foot position that allowed a fighter to throw with maximum power without telegraphing intent. He taught him a specific pivot used by Sugar Ray Robinson in the 1940s that almost no contemporary boxer was using anymore. If you have ever watched the fight scenes in Enter the Dragon and wondered why Bruce's footwork looks like nothing else in martial arts cinema, that is your answer. A significant portion of that footwork was developed in an empty gym at 3 in the morning by a heavyweight contender whose name has never been printed in any biography of Bruce Lee. The Hollywood producer who had paid the heavyweight is named in Bruce's letters to James Lee, but the family of the producer has requested that the name not be reproduced in any account of this story. The producer learned within 48 hours of the gym incident that his plan had failed. The film role he had been trying to redirect ultimately went to neither Bruce nor his preferred alternative. It went to a third actor who was not connected to the situation in any way. The producer continued to work in Hollywood until his retirement in 1979. He died in 1986. He never gave an interview about the incident. The heavyweight continued his boxing career for another 4 years. He never reached the title fight he had been preparing for at the Olympic Auditorium. He retired in 1971 with a record that was respectable but not legendary. He opened a small gym of his own in the Pacific Northwest. He trained amateur fighters for the next 20 years. He never spoke publicly about Bruce Lee. He never claimed any credit for any aspect of Bruce's development. He attended Bruce's funeral in 1973. He stood near the back. He did not speak to the family. He returned to his home that evening and resumed his teaching the next morning. He died of a heart attack in 1998. His family was contacted in 2010 by the researchers who had received Bruce's correspondence with James Lee. They confirmed the identity of the man Bruce had referred to in his letters using a nickname rather than a full name. The family asked that his identity remain private. The researchers honored the request. To this day, his full name has never been published in connection with the partnership. There is one final detail in Bruce's letters that has only been quoted in a small number of academic papers and has not appeared in any popular biography. In a letter to James Lee dated February of 1969, written just after the partnership ended, Bruce described the most important lesson he had learned in those 18 months. He wrote that the heavyweight had told him on their last night of training together that the 4 seconds in the gym that afternoon had not been the most important moment of their entire association. The most important moment had been 6 hours later, when the heavyweight had stood in his hotel room with $5,000 in cash on the bed and decided to give it back. The heavyweight had told Bruce on that final night that anyone could lose a fight. Losing fights was part of being a fighter. What had changed his entire life was discovering, for the first time in his career, that he had been used as a weapon against someone who did not deserve it. He told Bruce that the producer had not paid him to win. The producer had paid him to be a tool. And the moment the heavyweight realized he had been a tool, everything else became simple. Bruce repeated that lesson to his closest students for the rest of his life. The exact phrasing is preserved in 3 different student notebooks. He said, "The man who mocks you for being small is showing you the only ruler he owns. The man who pays him is the one you should actually be watching." He never named the heavyweight. He never named the producer. He kept the $5,000 story out of every interview, every public statement, and every appearance for the next 6 years until the day he died. The full picture of that afternoon, that night, and the 18 months that followed only became possible to assemble after 2010, when private correspondence between 2 men who had been dead for decades finally made it into the public record. The Main Street Gym in downtown Los Angeles closed permanently in 1984. The building was demolished a year later. The lot has been a parking structure since 1986. There is no plaque. There is no historical marker. There is nothing on the site to indicate what happened there in October of 1967. But every October, for the last 20 years, a small group of older boxing trainers and fighters who were present that afternoon meet at a restaurant in Little Tokyo for a private dinner. Most of them are in their late 70s and 80s now. They were there. They saw the 4 seconds. They did not know about the midnight return. They did not know about the 18 months of secret training. Most of them have read the released letters now. They understand the full picture. They do not talk much about the technique anymore. They do not need to. What they remember, what they have remembered for almost 60 years, is the afternoon a 6'4" heavyweight walked into the most dangerous boxing gym in America to mock a small Chinese man working a heavy bag, and the 4 seconds it took to discover that the heavyweight had brought the only weapon he owned to a fight the small man had been studying his entire life. The man who mocks you for being small is showing you the only ruler he owns. That is the line. That is what Bruce wrote in his own handwriting in a letter to James Lee in November of 1967, 2 weeks after the 4 seconds, 6 weeks into the secret partnership, more than a year before the Big Boss, more than 5 years before Enter the Dragon, and almost 43 years before any of it would be discovered. He was already measuring with something else. He had been measuring with it for years. The heavyweight just could not see it. The producer could not see it. The 40 professional fighters in that gym could not see it. By the time any of them figured out that Bruce Lee was not what they thought he was, the 4 seconds were already over, and the apology was already on its way.